Welcome you to Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Zingo TV is a free app that can be downloaded on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all TVs 2016 and forward. Live Now is a show all about finding the synergy and body-minded spirit. Please join us as we tackle intense topics of conversation that will spur your mind, steer your soul, and give you some direction. With that said, we are excited to dive into tonight's topic with you. Hello and welcome to another episode with us. Chuck, can you hear us?
I can hear you, Veenu. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Veenu. I'm so excited about tonight's topic, and I know it's something that you and I have actually spoken about multiple times over the years. And part of this is when self-confidence starts to become, I'll say, almost a crutch, where now ego starts to take over. And so is that a bad thing? Is that something where we go, oh, because we use this term all the time. They go, oh, that person's so egotistical. That person, their ego's running amok. And it's like going, is that true? Is it true? Or is it that they're just self-confident? And that when someone is living in a space of insecurity, that someone who's self-confident, who's going, I believe in me, I trust me, I know me, I'm going to elevate and go to another level. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that person, I don't know, man. You really want to be around that person with such a big ego? And why am I going there? Every narrative that we hear on television right now, they're throwing out words like narcissist, socialist, politica, self-absorbed, hubris. And I'm like, oh, okay, wow. I need a thesaurus just to keep up with what's going on. Because at this point, I said, so what are they really talking about? And it dawned on me, because we hear this all the time from people, and they're going, hey, love you first, put the oxygen mask on you first. I go, okay, so if it's self-care, isn't that self-worth as well? And isn't that just another form of self-confidence? Self-belief? So if you state something in the affirmative, are you egotistical? I wonder. What do you think?
So I've been studying under William White Cloud for a couple of years now, 3 years. And one of the things that I've learned from him is that there's two different orientations that we live in. We're either living in our ego or we're living in our creator. And when we have judgment, when we are critical, we are in our ego. Our ego wants us to play small. Our ego wants us to stay safe. And so every time we are out there in the world and we're saying, I want to do this, I have this big dream, I can do this. And then all of a sudden we're not doing it. The fear sets in. That's our ego saying, are you sure? Like that little mind that talks to us and says, are you sure you're able to do that? Well, you tried that last time and you really didn't do great. How are you going to pay the bills if you do that? Are you sure that you really, you're not that big? Like there's all that self-doubt. And it's not because it's self-hatred as much as it's trying to keep you safe. And by keeping us safe, we dim our light, we play small. And then when we get into our creator and we're in our flow and we're in that moment of really just creating and designing and we're curious, there's no more critical, there's no more critiquing, there's no more judgment. It just is what it is. And you find out that our feelings and our thoughts aren't even real. Our thoughts are based upon a belief that was innate in us when we were born and developing and being raised by our parents. And they did the best they could with what they knew at that time. And yet it installed these different beliefs in us that made us feel that the world is not safe. I have these thoughts around this because that's the way it's supposed to be. My brain keeps giving me evidence that this is true. And so it must be true because my brain will not lie to me. So every time I have a thought, my brain will show me why that thought is correct and why it's true. And again, that's the ego. And we need the ego. If we didn't have the ego, we wouldn't know where we park the car. We would not be attached to the realm that we live in each and every day. We wouldn't have the challenges that we have in our life. And yet, it's knowing that there's a different orientation when it comes to communicating with others. It comes to really seeing what our future has for us, our goals out there. Like, it's not just dream big, it's know big. Know that
Yeah.
there's something bigger outside of you that you're not even, tapping into. Today, I had a call with another team I work with, and the question was, what's one thing that you learned in 2023? And I said, for me personally, what I learned was that as big as I was going, I was still playing small.
Mm.
That there's even something bigger out there, and that it's my ego that keeps me from even imagining it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, a lot of things to unwrap there. Great presence in all of that shared information. And I would offer that there's some things that creep into our unconscious that we're not even aware of. And it's
Mm.
like language patterns. Someone said, well, give me an example. Well, if I'm sharing information and data from my soul and I go, why don't we close our eyes for a moment and take a deep breath? And they're like, oh, great. What would the alternate be? I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. They go, oh, wow, that seems like a command instead of an ask. And this is kind of the intonation that happens in some instances where people are going, well, one seems very commanding. To your point, it's like, was ego in control? Or was it an ask from someone? It's like, oh, well, that's a caring soul. So interpretation, perception starts to change some of the narrative around how people are showing up and whether or not the perception. And this was brilliant. We were having a conversation over the weekend, and in a community that Veenu and I are members of and engage in, called Your Best Life. I actually had a dad's group that we were meeting up, and we were talking about, you would have loved this, Veenu, because this is right in your wheelhouse, helicopter parenting.
Ah,
Ah, and I'm not saying because of you. I'm saying in general, this is something you deal with a lot of folks. And then we
I
started talking
do.
about bulldozing parents. They go, well, what the frick is that? And I said, oh, they clear the path for any and all, engagements, restrictions, opportunity. It's like there's only opportunity because the path is clear. There are no bumps. There's no hills. There's no uneven ruts. It is wide open. And they go, well, what's helicopter parenting? And we said, it all depends on the definition you give it.
Hovering.
That's it. And we were like, but what kind of helicopter are you? Are you a police helicopter that you're looking for problems? You're putting a spotlight? You're giving commands? Are you a search and rescue helicopter where you're just there to clean up and help give advice and then save? Or are you a news helicopter and you're just looking for all the facts? You're like trying to figure out, where's my kid? What are they doing? What's going on in life? Why do I go there? Because those different elements all come from inside of us. And it's like, wow, I get to choose who's showing up to the party. So I started finding even within myself, and I love what you said about playing small, because even as we've both been growing and progressing in life and making a commitment to like standing for one another and like go, all right, girl, I got you. We're not going to play small anymore. We're going to go higher and higher and higher. And we're looking for different and better and enlightened. And yes, the answer is yes. And there are still times I'm like going, are we ready? Do I deserve it? I know you deserve it, but I'm going, I don't know. I mean, Vino's exceptional and I'm trying to play catch up. So what do I do? And it's like, but is that really true? And the fact is, no, it's a perception.
That's why comparison steals our joy. It steals our joy. It steals our light.
Yes.
And it keeps us small. But going back to what you were saying about the helicopter parenting, I love that different. What kind of helicopter are you? And at the same time, it comes under one thing. It's our ego. Am I going to be judged for the parent that I am or I'm not?
Yes.
Is my kid going to be judged because of the parenting that I'm giving them? Am I going to be at fault for the choices that my child makes? And so again, it's the ego. It's the ego trying to keep us from, feeling inadequate.
Yes.
It's going to keep us from getting grandioso in our thoughts, and it's going to keep us where we're at on an even keel. And what happens is then we get so satiated with life that we forget what life is. We forget about the excitement, and we no longer have excitement. We no longer have joy. We no longer have the ambition
Yes.
to go out. And then our kids see us, and then they learn like, oh wait, I can't take chances because.
There's a great example of this. And there was a conversation that was occurring, and this family was talking about, hey, we want to have these adventures together. And they're like going, oh, but one of the parents, and there was two different families that were having this discussion. And they said, we can't afford to do that. And the other family was like going, okay, we can't afford to do that yet.
Mm.
And this conversation continued over the span of 2 decades, because the one family that said we can't do it yet found out ways of having garage sales and doing bake sales and doing lemonade stands, and then like actually buying and selling stuff on eBay and trading and upscaling stuff and getting rid of things that they didn't need, because one man's trash is another man's treasure. And all of a sudden they're like going on all these amazing trips together. But the family that said we can't afford this and we're absolute about it found out ways to shrink and get smaller. The other family, and it wasn't just one person, to your point, it was the representation, that manifestation of, okay, so what if?
Right.
Just not yet. That doesn't mean no. It just means just at this very moment, but we're going to find ways. And it's like, ooh.
Well, it goes back to how bad do you want it? It just reminds me when I was little, I grew up with not a lot of money. My mom was a single mom, putting herself through law school and working a couple jobs to make ends meet. And, everything I wanted to do was a no. We couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford violin, dance, Girl Scouts, nothing. I wasn't allowed to do any of it. And then fifth grade camp was coming up, and it was going to be back in the 70s, 80s. It was $150 was a lot of money back then.
Sure.
And I mean, for some people, it's still a lot of money. And my mom's like, I don't know what you're going to do, but I can't afford it. And I said, I went to the school, and they said, well, don't worry, we're going to have a lot of fundraisers. I had the highest sales and everything. Not only did I pay through the fundraisers in fifth grade from fifth grade camp, but I paid for my eighth grade Disneyland trip. I paid for eighth grade Catalina trip, all in fifth grade, because I was selling magazines. I was, selling Swiss Colony. Like I was door to door. And I didn't realize, because you say this, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's always been me. I've always found a way. And I didn't realize that back when I was 10, it was setting the precedence for who I am today. So Chuck, you literally just blew my mind when you said that, because I'm like, oh my God, that was me when I was 10 years old. And even today, and you've known my journey since 2008 or 2007. And I always knew, right? I always knew, and I was always going to find a way. And how many times I have fallen and gotten up and fallen and gotten up. And, here's what I say to the listeners out there. If you're standing, you have gotten up, and it doesn't matter how you've gotten up, celebrate that you've gotten up. And if you can get up now, what else can you get up from and get out from?
That is such a beautiful, beautiful blessing you just gave everyone. Because in the moment, it's a decision. Please, if you're listening to Veenu and myself for even a millisecond, we all have opportunity. As long as you're drawing breath, you're above ground, you're watching this, you're listening to this, understand this very clearly. Your life is a myriad of choices. And what if for a moment you empowered yourself by removing this self-doubt of I have to? See, when I have to, then that's like I'm creating an imperative, I'm pushing, I'm resisting. I'm like, okay. Now people go, wait, what? You have to eat. I go, well, there's these certain needs, but what are you eating? Are you eating healthy, nutritious? Are you fueling your body, mind, and spirit with energetic resources that elevate you? Or are you stealing from yourself? Because there's this false narrative running in your soul, in your mind, in your body, in your spirit that's holding you back from having everything you've ever wanted in life. And so I'm going to remind you of this one really simple thing. You don't have to do anything. You get to.
Yes.
You get to. That simple shift from have to get is like, whoa, wait a second. That just changed my entire perspective where I am no longer being blind. It's like, oh, this is the this get to see opportunities. Because there's this concept, and Veenu, you know this better than anyone. People go, oh, I just don't get those kind of opportunities. Wait, what? You know when opportunities knock in? By my watch, about every 10 seconds. Because
Yes.
there's an offer, there's a choice, there's a decision to make, there's all these different things. And so we choose to focus on where focus goes, energy flows. So if you are going to be a problem identifier, because that's all I do is I just look at problems. And you go, oh, I'm a pattern recognition expert. I go, because you're not looking for all the beauty in your life. You're not actually looking for the beauty that surrounds you, that fills you and fuels you.
You know, you just brought up a good point about patterns. How many of us are always looking for the patterns that don't get us further, faster in our life? Instead,
Right.
and we negate the patterns that have gotten us to where we are. Like I just brought up that good one. Like, you know, like just recognizing like, wow, I've been doing this since I was 10 years old. And that's my secret sauce is that I learned at a young age. If I want it bad enough, I will always find a way. And that is a pattern that if I look back now at all the successes I had in my life, because I found a way, I took my no's and I'm like, okay, not now. What about this one? Oh, that's a no too. Okay, great. So not my person, maybe this one. And then all of a sudden someone said, yes, I'll help you. And it was a referral. It was a 15-minute phone call. It was, some advice because they'd been where I'd been. And then but I took action on it. When we look at the opportunities, how many opportunities are coming our way that we're not taking action on? And I'm going to tell you, that is our ego. That is our ego.
And there's this dance between fear and significance.
Yes.
Where we're like, because you need to feel valuable. So folks go, oh, significance is one of my highest values. I go, okay, great.
Right.
They're like, wait, is that a problem? I said, no.
We all need to know value. We all know our worth.
Yes. But what's driving that need for significance? Is it fear? That false expectation? I'm not enough, that I need to invest more into this. The people the fastest throw fear to the side because they know this one simple thing, and that is everything that you need in life isn't everything that you're not doing.
It's on the other side of the fear.
Billion%. So people go, wait, what? I go, you don't even have to think about it for a second. How many times in the anticipation of something going wrong, you didn't even engage? They're like, wait, what? Think of it like Top Gun. Maverick's coming in. He's got someone in his sights. He has tone. They say, take the shot. He's like, it's no good. It's no good. What does he do? He peels off. You're like, wait. So here's the lesson in this. Who else is in danger when that happens? Anyone who's in your sphere of influence. Because what happens, and this goes back to where Veenu was, it's like all of a sudden people started coming into my view. All of a sudden people started coming into my universe. Why? Because her energy changed. When Veenu Keller shows up, I'm telling you, people freaking listen. Why? The woman has gravity. She has intensity. She has heart. She has massive intellect. She cares. She cares. That energy emotes to other people. And in fact, it's fuel for other people. It's fuel for her. It's fuel for us. That's why she's one of my dearest friends. I love her. She's my sister from another mister. Her husband's like my brother. So why do I go there? And they go, yeah. It sounds like a love fest, Chuck. I said, and there's a reason why. Because she walks the freaking talk. She doesn't just put it out there and go, it'd be nice. I'll just try it on. She's like, I'm going to wear these jeans so they got holes in them. Why? Because they're comfortable, they look great, I look great, I feel great. And yes, to one of our listeners, she said paralysis. Oh my gosh. Paralysis comes when you lose faith in self.
Yes.
It's not someone else who's going to give you that. That comes from within you. So if you've been shoving significance, if you've been ignoring ego, I'm going to tell you right now, you've been playing small.
And I
And
also
I'm
just
telling
and
you this,
thank
and
you
I have
for
a PhD in doing this, by the way.
and I thank you for those compliments. And and why do I walk my talk? Because I also own where I've screwed up. I also own that, when people say, "Oh, you must have the best six kids." I have the best six kids who make mistakes. I have the best six kids because I make mistakes.
Yes.
I will be the first one to say that I'm not the best parent in my eyes. It's easy. And you said it last week. It's easy for us to coach on the outside, but when we're the player, we can't see the play, and so that's why I have a coach, because it's to take ownership. It's to say, okay, I did not do that right. It could be the last 13 years I've screwed up as a stepmom, maybe, but I'm going to own that and say, okay, well, what do we need to do to make it better? Is
Hmm.
there a better? Is there a better? I screwed up, and I always talk about how all the screw ups I did when I was raising my boys because I didn't know better and I did the best that I could. There's we could say, well, there's no book. There's tons of books, but that just because there's tons of books, it doesn't mean that that book suited my lifestyle in that moment for what I was going through as a parent,
Right.
you know, and, but I'm vulnerable about it. I'm okay to share that. I'm okay to say, look, one of the reasons why I can see behaviors and I see the different things is because it's not my family. I'm not emotionally involved. I get to see both sides.
Right.
And my coach is great about calling me out too and saying, "Hey, look, this is what I'm like, me?" They're like, "Yeah, you." And I'm like, "Okay, great. So I got some work to do." And it's that constant growing, right? It's what we put our intention and intention on grows. And when they ask me like, "What is it your thoughts for 2024?" And I'm like, I normally have a word or a phrase, and then all of a sudden I thought to myself, you know what I want for 2024? I want to be open. I want to
Hmm.
receive. I want
Hmm.
to grow, and I want to have a hell of a lot of fun doing it.
Amen, sister. Because I'll tell you what, this either or ideology where people go, I got to work hard. I go, oh, there you go. I have to again. No, you get to.
I do.
You get to. You get to have fun. It's not a total sum proposition where it's either or. It's not a balance. There's no such thing as balance, y'all. If you take this one thing away today, we talk about this all the freaking time. Harmony.
Yes.
Your life is seeking some symbiotic relationship, some kind of, if you want to call it, some integration where this sphere of life where there's all these different entry points, there's all these different touch points. So it's not about one thing. And if you smack it on one side because it's fluid, it expands on the other. It's always looking for equilibrium, though. It's seeking this. That's not balance, by the way. It's not. Because when is something going to change? All the time. This is where gratitude and appreciation and gratefulness, this is what shapes the narrative. When we get to understand that we are so blessed, our worst days are someone else's best day.
Yes. Amen. Amen. It's like one of our listeners says, the get to puts you in that place of gratefulness. And it's so different from the have tos. And it is because it's the pull versus the push. But
Yes.
here's what I want to say also about our ego, why it's so important, because it helps us realize areas that we still need to grow.
Mm.
Without that, if we're always in the creative mind and we're always in the land of life is just life and there is no feelings, then we again get satiated to that. And so we need the ego to remind us we're here, we're now, we're living, and we feel our feels. And it's also an opportunity for us to see what's the next step in growing. And I love what one of my coaches say, Dean. He says, you know, life is simple. It's just not easy.
Right.
It is. Life is really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. And, from other mentors I've had over the years, they say if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. And I'm like, huh. And they said, seriously, think about all the things you can remember that you're proud of. And I took a moment and I kind of took inventory in my brain. And they said, tell me one thing you thought of that you could literally say that was a milestone in your life that was easy. And I'm like, huh, nothing. Not having a baby, not going through a divorce, not getting remarried, not having, getting my degrees, not going through the trainings, not taking tests, not becoming, an elite instructor, nothing that I've done that makes me feel proud
Right.
has been easy. It's
And
taken
yet,
blood, sweat, and a heck of a lot of tears.
and yet it was all simple.
It was.
I mean, it's kind of the bananas part, right? Because people go, wait, what? Like, so there's a line from the movie Dumb and Dumber, and he goes, "You've got a 1 in a million chance," and he goes, "Okay, so you're saying there's a chance?"
Right?
Like, I love these hopeless optimists who are like going, "Yes, yes," because they're looking for is a sliver,
Mhm.
and it's like how many, and we've noticed this a lot, Venu, and it's not just in the millennial and zennial generations. There's this crossover even from the Gen Xers, where there's a lot of delicate flowers out there. They
Right.
cannot stomach any kind of constructive feedback, and I'm not even calling it criticism, because in many instances it's feed forward. It's like, here's an opportunity to grow and advance, and they go, oh well, you were just so negative. um all emotions serve us, all of them.
Yep.
And for so many people, they've lived a life of conditioning where it's been all about participation medals and an opportunity because you showed up. I'm like, wait, so you took up space, you're breathing, and for that, you're going to get rewarded. Wait, what? Like, okay, um, what if, and I'm just snowballing here a little bit, what if you showed up with an open heart, open mind? You were listening and present. You were engaging with other people without judgment, being your true, authentic self, and sharing the one true gift, which is you, with other souls. Would that have been a different experience? Might you have walked away with some different emotions, feelings, connections, energetic flow? I'm not judging. I'm just asking.
Right. It's getting back into what we talk about is that curiosity,
Yes.
and getting out of the critical. I was just thinking while you were talking is that, when the ego says, no, don't do that, that's bad.
Hmm.
Where did the ego get the definition of what bad and good is? Who's the judge? Like, who said it's bad? Who said it's wrong? It's the person that you're involved with. Their feelings got hurt
Yes.
because they have their own ideology, they have their own thoughts, they have their own beliefs, they have their own emotions. And then the person that I'm in the conversation with, I have to take responsibility because they got hurt off of something I said. And if we're all curious and we ask better questions like, wow, did you mean to say it that way? I was just even talking about this with kids. When you hear your kid come back to you or even your partner in a tonality that's defensive, you got to think something that you said, whether you meant to say it or not, they heard it in a point where they needed to defend or they would never have come back at that tonality. So instead of going back and defending yourself now, get curious and say, I must have said something that offended you that you felt you needed to prove or defend something. And I'm so sorry. That was not my intention. You know,
My youngest, who you know well, has adopted this languaging pattern, and it's kind of how can I put it? It's neutral in its delivery and imparts a lot of inward thinking in the moment. So something will happen, and she will turn and look at you and go, "That's fascinating." And I'm like, "Was it really?"
What specifically was?
Yeah, I was like, well, what specifically was fascinating about this? And she goes, well, the whole concept of what you were discussing, I just find that fascinating. And I'm like, are you toying with my mind? Because right now I'm having like internal dialogue that there's like 15 different voices going off, and and she's just watching my reaction. So I was like, hmm, I find it interesting that you're so fascinated. So what in this did you find that was so fascinating? And here's what's been great about this Venu. It opens up a whole nother line of dialogue.
Well, because I do know her well, I'm
Yes,
like watching this conversation between you going on, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall because she's so intellectual, and she's probably really analyzing. She literally is probably analyzing what is going on and wants
100%.
to get it right in what she says, and to make sure that someone can't debunk what she's going to say or how she's going to say it, so she feels seen and heard.
Here's the shift that has been beautiful to see in her. She has been able to clearly understand where significance and the definition of that lives in her life now. And when someone else says something or has a reaction, she'll ask herself, okay, did I say this in such a way that wasn't supportive, loving, or was my intention not sound? Was I not present in that moment? And if she goes, and I was like, bingo, that's beautiful.
That is.
Why? Because someone else's interpretation of what you said, and to your point, if we have enough sensory acuity, or when we have enough sensory acuity and awareness, then we can ask a better question and go, did something I say make you uncomfortable?
Right.
Not because we don't have to escalate the situation. Go, did I offend you? Are you sensitive? Are you a delicate flower?
Because then
Do
you're
you?
critical again.
Because now it's like, oh, well, could you be more patronizing?
Right. It's so funny because I've been in the last few months, I know one of my issues at home with my husband and my kids is when um I have this need to be right. It's one of my beliefs that I've grown up with, like I have to get it right. I need to be right. And so now I verbally, when it's going back and forth, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to be right now. I
Right.
don't need to be in control. And they're like, I didn't say you did. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not saying this to create, I'm telling myself this out loud.
Right.
I'm telling myself right now, I don't need to be right. I don't need to be control because that's what's escalating this. And
Mm,
they're like, oh, well, I don't need to be right either. I'm like, well, that's great. Neither one of us do. And guess what? It like literally neutralizes it
it does.
in that moment because that's really what we're fighting over. We have like totally forgot why we're bickering because now we're just needing to be in control or be right.
And
And again, that's the ego.
yes, and most people don't mean to hurt. They don't
No,
mean to hurt. In fact, it's out of gross negligence or naivete that sometimes something will be said. There was no motive or intention behind it.
right.
And in fact, I'll go a step further. Sometimes it's just reactionary because we're like, we'll repeat what someone said and go, oh, so now you're copying me. It's like, no, I'm confused. And so I didn't get it the first time. I'm slow. So please bear with me. And they go, yeah, you look confused. I'm like going, bingo.
I am.
And that has nothing to do with you, what you just said. It has more to do with how I'm processing it.
Mm,
And this is where it can get a little sketchy. When we don't understand the communication requirement that someone else has when these types of moments pop up,
mm,
I have a tendency to not push back. I have a tendency to go quiet and I start listening even more intently. And in the past, not now, but in the past, people would go, oh, you don't even care enough to respond? You got nothing to say? And it's like, no, I'm just like, I'm a little numb. I'm a little stunned. I'm a little taken aback. I said, I apologize. This is how I sort information. So if someone starts hurling rocks at me, I choose to duck and cover rather than standing up and going, okay, I'm going to give you a target. Keep going.
right.
It's like, I'm like, why? It's not a fear thing. It's I'm like going, why are they throwing rocks at me? And they weren't. They were trying to hit the squirrel or the snake behind me. And I go, oh, but my interpretation was I can't see my own blind spots. I don't know what's behind me. I don't know what other things are happening. And this is where communication and better question and answering and having people that stand for you, your coaches, your strategists, your mentors, your significant other, and
Right.
yes, your children, because out of the mouth of babes comes some unbelievable distinctions. And you're like going, wow,
Why didn't I see that?
I, I'm the adult in the room.
Yeah, and I didn't see it. It's so funny. It reminds me of like when you're in a crowd and you see somebody that you know, and they're like, "Hey," and you're like, "Hey," and they're not even talking, and they go right past you, like they didn't even see you. They're saying hi to the person behind you. You're like, "Oh, I guess they knew them too."
Right.
You and you feel like, "Oh gosh," I was like, "Hey,"
Oh,
but that's what's happening. We don't know what other people are focused on, and we make an assumption they're focused on us.
yes.
It's about us. It's about the hurt. It's about the anger. And, when people say, like, why people are so angry, I always say anger is a second emotion. If you look at any time you've ever been angry and you ask yourself, what was the first emotion? It is hurt. It is embarrassment. It is, feeling dismissed. There's so many other emotions that we feel first. And because we're not able to communicate it in a way that is going to be what we think is going to solve it, we go to anger because everyone understands anger. Anger is the universal language. Everyone understands anger. And so we have to use that as a gateway
Yes.
to getting the resolution of the emotions that we didn't want to feel in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to feel anger, but we don't want to feel the hurt instead of just saying, okay, I'm hurting and it's coming out this way. My husband and I were just having a discussion today about something that, we were going through in our family. And I said, he's like, well, are you just going to stay angry about it? And I said, I'm not angry. He's like, you seem angry. And I said, honey, I'm hurt.
Mm,
I feel betrayed. I feel hurt. I feel jaded. And all these words started coming out. And I'm like, it is not anger at all. And if it is, and that's how you took it, let me be the first to apologize because it's not anger. It is years of just being dumbfounded. Like this now is coming out years later and no one's talked about it. And now all of a sudden, and I said, it is all hurt. I'm trying to, even at my age, I'm trying to figure this out. When we have kids coming to us and saying, I felt like this for years, I felt like this. And it's like, no one's ever said anything.
oh, it's
How do we fix it? How do we move forward when, as the adult, we don't know? And I guess as kids, and this is one of my specialties, but again, in my own family, as much as it's hard for your kids to talk to you and, and you're like, hey, I'm a coach and my kids can't talk to me, but your kids can talk to me. It's the same thing. My kids can't feel it because as much as we want to create that open, safe, and trusting space, kids still don't want us to be disappointed. Kids still don't want us to feel that we did something wrong.
right. And
They
it's
don't
the
want,
same. And listen, adults are just big kids.
we
Uh,
are,
and so to
but it's
your
all ego. It comes all under this topic of ego.
a billion percent. And that's why we're presenting it tonight is
Yeah.
if you even for a moment find some self-resolution within you, or you're able to you're able to go ahead and let go of some judgment. The one thing, and you said this, it was so brilliant, and that is when we get in that moment of going, wait, no one talked about this. I said, please, this is the second thing. If you can take this away from this conversation, don't leave things in the world of the unspoken.
Yes.
Because what will happen is there's an energetic anchor that's set, and I'm gonna refer to it in a very plebeian way, but in regards to physics, think of it as a black hole. If you drop this black hole, and you're like, it's like the head of a nail, it's like the top of a pin. I go, yes, but the longer it sits there, the more it pulls into it, and it
Mm.
starts to grow and expand. So all of a sudden, you're like going, yeah, what keeps why does stuff keep disappearing? Why do positive emotions, connection, contribution, conversation, it's like around this one thing seems to just, yes, thank you. Oh, bless you, our Facebook user who's like, it's a soul sucker.
Sucker. I
And
love it.
and it not only devours your soul, so we can all agree that it feeds on you and you
Mhm.
don't know why you're tired. You don't know why this one thing. And then all of a sudden, when it comes to light, and they're like, I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want to say anything. I assumed that you were too busy. We had already moved past this. And I go, no, we're not moved past it because you're having an emotional reaction. I'm having a reaction. And it's like, why? I love you. You love me. There was no intent of harm. And on the other side of this, is it really that big a deal? Yes. When we live in the past, when we think about that for a decade or whatever the case was, that this was festering in the background. It's like going, and why? Because we have an expectation of self that I'm better than this. And if you trusted me, then we could have had this conversation openly. And I'm going, well, I didn't feel safe at that time. So I made myself small. I was noticing that you weren't feeling elevated either. Always? No. But at the times that I was feeling small, and I go, oh, so this kind of takes the conversation to a different paradigm, which is reasons and seasons.
And what we talked about also a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, I forget, because we talk about this a lot, but the expectations.
Oh,
It's
really
the
interesting.
expectations. Like, I expected you as my mom to do this. I expected you as my husband to do this. I expected you as my coach to do this. It's like all the world of expectations leads us down a path of, upset.
Oh,
It leads down a path of not feeling good enough. It just full anger, upset, distress, all those feelings of that don't resolve anything.
and
You
self
know?
expectation. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
should know better. I
Right.
should have caught this sooner. Oh, if I was only being present. And I go, and this goes back to one of my benchmark monikers in my life. You can be doing your best, never being your best. When you're being your best, you'll always do your best. So, how do you know you're being your best? I said, because you're living in that moment.
Right.
It's really, really simple. It doesn't mean that you did everything wonderful. It means that you lived in a space in grace where you could actually find the love, light, and happiness within yourself to forgive. And I don't believe in the phrase forgive and forget. I believe in the phrase forgive. And then remember all the lessons, all the distinctions, all the emotions. Because when we have that friendly reminder, and you understand now that by letting go, that you actually get to move towards the light and the freedom, that means it's taking you away from judgment and beratement and the negativity that may be associated with different memories.
And it's finding the gift. It's finding the gift in that moment. Like, forgive and find the gift, not forgive and forget. Forgive and find.
That beautifully said. It's the moniker of this show. Live now. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow's a mystery. So many people are fearful of what tomorrow may or may not bring.
Right.
And you and I have talked about this many times. We live in this kind of constant evolution of faith and going, okay, I trust that the universe has my back. I trust that by us being our best selves, that we're going to continue to grow and affect and effect and possibly even inspire some people to just find more of the true self. That's what Live Now is all about. We're asking people to live now. Driving around looking in the rearview mirror is a recipe for disaster. And if you're constantly trying to see all the way down the highway, you miss all the beauty of everything that's happening around you. So, what if we just stay in our lane, look around, slow down just a little bit? Because do you really need to get there at 100 miles an hour? Some
Enjoy the
people,
journey.
please, because the truth is, that's what life is all about. It's, if you believe in what Simon Sinek says, the infinite mindset is about staying in the game as long as you can. Because there's no winning or losing. that to your very beginning of this entire conversation is, if I am judging, then there's only winners and losers. If I'm appreciating and living in the moment, then man, I want to stay on this path, this journey for as long as I possibly can. That's called life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here, like, do something about it. Like, hear our
Mm.
shows and reach out to Chuck and I. You know, we're both available on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Let us allow us to be in your life to support you in this journey, because that's what we do. We do this show to bring wisdom to people, because if you know better, you can do better.
Yes.
You know, and we're here, we're open. We invite you guys to contact us, to get on a call with us. Let us, it could be just one call, and we can help you resolve these things, because living in a space of I don't know what to do, the dreams are too big, I can't do it, I play too small, I don't know how to do bigger. I'm just going to tell you, you're right. Because if you think it, you're right. And if you know better, you can do better. And you're right, you can.
Yep.
And I love that saying, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Like, you are right. You're absolutely can, because your mind will always win. And your mind, like I said in the beginning of this call, this talk call, whatever we're on right now, it's, your brain won't lie to you. It will
Exactly.
show you every reason why it's telling you the truth if you're playing small, as much as it will tell you every reason why you're doing it right when you get big. And you're like, how did I get that success? Because your brain was going to prove to you you were worth it, because
Yes.
you said you were.
Yeah, this is beautiful. One of the participants in our chats is saying, I was literally thinking our expectations ever good. And here's the deal. If you're expecting something, then you're already judging it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what if you actually lived in anticipation
Mm.
and appreciation? What this will allow is an opportunity to see it as you need it to feel it. So ask yourself this question: how do I need to feel right now? How do I need to feel, and what will that mean to me? Because now you get to set the anticipation of having that experience and that feeling, and pick more than one. In fact, feel free to stack them, because now anything that you're engaged in, if you are feeling centered, guided, loving, contributory, valued, oh my gosh. And they go, what if I needed to feel important? Great, then appreciate yourself, because the only one that can actually make you feel important is you. Other people will be looking at you as a resource. They'll be looking to love you, to share with you. So I would just say expectations are interesting. They're fascinating. And anticipation and appreciation, because what's the saying? When you can start to trade expectations for appreciation, you will find that there's a whole different metric in your life.
100%. 100%. It's, you know, when we look at the ego versus, you know, living in a world where we're just doing the best that we can with what we have.
Yes.
You know, it's learning how to be self builders, because we are professional self beaters, you know, and that was always the ego keeping us down, the ego keeping us small. And it's time that we rise above that. And, you know, like one of the participants just said, and anticipation versus expectations, what you were just saying, you know, anticipate the goodness in your life and the goodness will come. Get excited for it. There's no difference, they said, between nervousness and excitement, except for the thoughts.
Yes.
The feeling's still the same. The butterflies are still the same. It's just the thought you have attached to it, the fear actually that you have attached to it,
And the
you
meaning
know,
you give it. That's it.
and just stop, you know, just stop learning to play small and allow your creator inside of you, because we all have it. We all have gifts.
Yes.
We all have an artist in us, whether it's an artistry in our communication, an artistry with our eyes, an artistry with our hands. There's an artistry in us that is able to give different gifts to the world. And once we can tap into that without the fear, without that little mind saying, nope, you can't do that today. Nope, stay safe. It gives you that sense of freedom that you've never had before.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Listen, this flew by again already. It's bananas, and just know, love you, my sister. So grateful this year of being able to commune and connect and collaborate with you has been one of the biggest joys of my life. I love you dearly, you, Brian, the kids, and happy holidays. Happy
Thank
holidays.
you. I feel the same about you and Julie and the kids. It's been a great collaboration, and we're not done yet. The best is yet to come. We have a few more shows to take us out of 2023 and to open us up to what 2024 will be. And speaking of which, I'm doing an event with a friend of mine. It's called thrivingtogetherevent.com. If you go to thrivingtogetherevent.com, you'll see it's coming up in January, and it's really going to bring the harmony between couples and kids. So check that out as well. And we'll see you guys next week.
All the best, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Live Now with Veenu and Chuck Hogan. Follow us on Instagram at Veenu Inspires and at Chuck Hogan Now. For more about Veenu, please visit VeenuInspires.com. And for Chuck, please check out YBLNow.com. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.